Hello and welcome to our Chapter 14 video over topicality. We're going to cover exactly what is this stock issue and how do you approach it in a debate round. Today's topic or today's presentation is entitled Topicality, a Journey to the Dark Side. So how exactly is topicality a journey to the dark side? First of all, topicality is a debate topic. It is a debate argument that you can use that can be very, very effective. It can be very, very powerful. However, it's not the most popular argument to use out there. In fact, many judges just absolutely hate having to hear a topicality argument. And so you as the debater have to make a very, very conscious decision as to whether or not this is going to be the best argument that you can use in a round, and exactly how much do you need to be writing topicality in order to be able to win within that debate round. However, this is going to be another tool in your toolkit, and again, if done effectively, topicality alone can be enough to win you several different debate rounds. And if you are a good topicality debater, then that can turn a debate round which otherwise may have been humdrum into something very, very special. So let's take a look at topicality, what it is, and what are some different ways that you can structure topicality. So first off, words are kind of important. Topicality is a words-based argument. Whenever you take a look at the resolution, there are all sorts of different interpretations as to what exactly does the resolution mean really. What does it mean to curtail your domestic surveillance? What does it mean to increase development and or exploration of the Earth's oceans? All of these questions are real-world arguments. People in law school, people in courtrooms, legislators, politicians, they all spend a lot of time arguing what exactly does the law say? What exactly does the Constitution mean when it says, when it provides in the First Amendment the act of freedom of speech? What exactly does that entail for us? And so in interpreting what these previous words mean, we are able to solve a lot of different issues and solve a lot of different problems. And this is an argument that will come up oftentimes. So even though the affirmative team in the debate round has a plan, it's really trying to prove that the resolution itself is what is true. And the resolution this year is resolved the United States federal government should substantially curtail its domestic surveillance. And so if they're going to prove that the resolution is true, then they have to have a plan that does what the resolution says it should do. Whatever the affirmative team does, they need to be following this specific resolution. If their plan doesn't do what this resolution says, then they have not, in fact, proved that the resolution is, in fact, true. So if the AF's goal is to prove that the resolution is true, then they need to do what it says. But what does it say really? And that's where topicality becomes a valid argument, and that's where it becomes an argument that you see oftentimes in debate rounds. So think about it. Is a plan that limits how much we can spy on embassies in the United States really domestic surveillance? And keep in mind, domestic means within one's own country. If the government limits how long it can keep information, then is it really curtailing its surveillance? And then finally, and this last one you can't quite see here, if private companies are not allowed to keep information it gathers on you, then is the federal government really curtailing its own domestic surveillance, or is it curtailing someone else's domestic surveillance? And so these are all questions that are going to come up throughout the debate season. And if you can argue why another team is not topical, why the affirmative team is not topical, then that can save you in a lot of different ways. It can give you an argument that you can roll out whenever you're seeing a case that you have not seen before and that you are not prepared to debate. It can give you a quick win whenever the opposing team is able to defend a lot of its on-case arguments, but maybe isn't the most prepared when it comes to debating topicality. And it's something that can oftentimes impress a lot of judges who may otherwise want to discard topicality and focus on debates that are not based upon words. So the negative team's goal, and this is information that you are definitely going to want to copy. The negative team wants the resolution to be as narrow and as limited as possible. And the reason for this is pretty obvious. They can't possibly prepare and research all of the cases that are bound to come up throughout the debate season. And they can't possibly prepare for cases that aren't bound by the limits of the resolution. If the affirmative team came in and had a plan that was going to save all of the butterflies on the planet, chances are, as the negative team, you're not going to be prepared to debate against that. And it would be grossly unfair for anyone to expect you to be able to debate that. And so it's already difficult enough being the negative team to have to debate something that the affirmative team is going to bring up, especially when you already don't know what the case is that they're going to be introducing in the debate round. But if they were to bring up something that didn't even meet this year's resolution, then they're asking you to do an impossible task. So the affirmative team's goal is going to be the opposite. The affirmative team wants the topic to be as broad as humanly possible, and the reason for this is pretty obvious. The affirmative team wants to run some different creative apps that the negative team won't see coming. They want to be able to come up with cases that are going to surprise you, that you're not going to be prepared to debate, that are maybe outside the norm of what you're expecting to see within a debate round. And so if the affirmative team can put you into the box of having to debate topicality, sometimes an affirmative strategy is just to prep out topicality very, very well so that they can run a case that you are not going to be expecting within that debate round. So how exactly is topicality structured? This is where things get a little bit tricky, but you need to memorize not only these different terms, but also the order that they are going to be present in. The first step is interpretation, and that's where you simply define the word. What does domestic mean? What exactly is surveillance? That is just a dictionary definition, or oftentimes it's a dictionary definition. Sometimes it can come from a law source of the word that is in question. The violation, okay, is your link. That is why the affirmative team does not meet the resolution. And so if you were to define surveillance as being watching your own American citizens, or domestic surveillance as watching your own American citizens, and the affirmative team were actually spying on people from Germany, then that's obviously the violation. They're looking at someone from another country. Your standards, meanwhile, are the reasons why the judge should prefer your interpretation over other people's interpretations. Keep in mind, you could pull up a dictionary and find hundreds of different definitions for several different words. There are several different definitions that you can pull up just looking up the word surveillance, or even domestic, or even curtail. All of those are going to come up with several different meanings to them. Your goal, though, is not to just pull up a dictionary definition, point to it, and say the opposing team didn't do this. You have to come up with a reason why your definition specifically is better than the other team's. And that's where things get a little tricky. That's where it becomes difficult to try to argue why your interpretation is the best. And why is it the best for debate? Why is it best for this topic? Why is it best when you're considering surveillance? And there are all sorts of different reasons why your interpretation could be better, and it's going to be your job as the negative team to come up with what exactly would those standards be. Finally, the last issue is voters. And those are reasons why topicality is important and why the judge should vote for it. This is simply your impact in the round. This is, judge, this is important because, and then you give them the reason why exactly they should be voting on topicality. So what are some commonly used standards that appear in debate? What are some reasons for why a specific definition is better than another? And these are some of the most common standards, the commonly used standards that you will find heard spoken throughout the course of the season. The first one is limits. And you can argue that your definition is better because it fairly limits both teams to an acceptable amount of ground. Okay? As a negative team, you can say that your definition is good because it keeps the affirmative team from being able to debate whatever it wants. Your definition is going to be smaller and much more specific than what the affirmative team's is. And so you can argue that limits are good because that makes everything predictable. It allows both teams to be able to debate the same thing. Bright line, however, is a definition is better because it draws a clear distinction between what is topical and what is not topical, whereas the aft definition might just be vague. The word substantial is in this year's resolution. The word substantial, according to some dictionaries, means 20%. Other dictionaries may say that the word substantial just means a large amount. And so the word a large amount is very, very vague. If you're able to point to 20%, you could say that you're drawing a clear line in the sand. My definition is best because you either meet the definition or you don't meet the definition. There is no gray middle ground that you can fall upon. And then finally is ground. You can argue that the negative team's interpretation of the resolution restricts the number of cases that fall within the topic. Therefore, the affirmative team cannot come here and run any case that they choose. Okay, so some commonly used voters that exist. There are several different reasons why topicality is an argument that should be voted upon, and these are some of the most common ones that will exist. Stock issues is the first one. You could argue that topicality is simply a stock issue of debate, and if a case is not topical, then you must vote against it. Stock issues is a commonly held tradition that a lot of judges have had in the past, and so you could just say, Judge, this is a stock issue, this is important as a stock issues judge. If you believe that they have lost topicality, then you must vote against that opposing team. Fairness is another one. You cannot promote unfair treatment of the negative team by the AF by granting them your ballot. It's simply not fair for the negative team to have to research all of these different untopical AFs that are out there. And so in the name of fairness, the judge should uphold whatever the best definition is or whatever the best topicality argument was within the debate round. And then finally, education. Debate is supposed to be about education, and we can learn only by being able to debate cases that you can prepare for and argue effectively. If you haven't been able to prepare for a butterfly case that was brought in that is obviously untopical, then you're not going to learn anything. And debate is supposed to be about learning. It's supposed to be about a search for truth. And if a team is allowed to come in and run an untopical AF, then you're basically wasting your time. Those are all arguments that you can make to the judge within the debate round. So, how do you win topicality? This is where it gets a little difficult, a little tricky for the affirmative team to lose or for the negative team to win topicality. The negative team needs to win all parts of a topicality argument in order to win on topicality. They need to win the interpretation, they need to win the violation, they need to win standards, and they need to win voters. If they can win all four of those, then logically they have won the topicality argument. However, if you have one of those things missing, if the affirmative team is able to win just one of those arguments, then they have won topicality. It's kind of like the opposite of what we talked about when it came to stock issues. For a stock issues judge, logically, if the negative team wins one stock issues, then they have won the debate round. However, this is the opposite of this. The negative team has to win all the parts of topicality in order to win on topicality. So a couple of things to remember is a way to think about topicality is that it's essentially a disadvantage when it comes down to it. Your link in the topicality argument is simply your violation, okay? And your impact is your voters, okay? So you have basically a link story that is created through a topicality argument. And so if you can think of them in those terms, then you're going to be able to be pretty effective in constructing a topicality argument. And a few things to keep in mind, and this is more advice really than anything related specifically to topicality, is only run topicality when the AF's really, really untopical. How can you claim that they're really being unfair if you've seen this case 20 times already? So you need to get beyond the definitions. Get at why your definitions are better for debate. The standards debate is oftentimes where topicality is won and where topicality is lost. If an opposing team does not answer your standards, then you have to make them answer your standards. You have to bring up why those standards were dropped. If you can focus on why your interpretation is just better for the activity as a whole, then you're going to be winning a lot of different topicality rounds. So this was Topicality, a journey to the dark side. I definitely encourage you to become proficient in learning how to debate topicality because it is a very effective tool that you can use in your toolkit, especially when it comes to winning debate rounds. So have a fantastic rest of your day. I will see you next time.